For over 30 years, the Subaru Legacy nameplate has been a staple in the lineup, giving buyers a car that is comfortable, that's accommodating, practical, and best of all, affordable. But most important for consumers in colder regions of the country, you get Subaru Symmetrical All-Wheel Drive Standard, which is a competitive advantage over the rivals. However, in 2022, sedans aren't necessarily the most popular, as brands are focusing on crossovers, and in fact, some manufacturers have left this segment entirely. And Subaru is one of those brands that's still offering sedans, but they're really focusing on the Crosstrek, the Outback, and the Forester. However, this specific generation for the Legacy has really drawn my attention and admiration because they really focused on the interior quality, but also giving you a car that gives you a premium feel without paying the premium price. And that's why I have returned once again to feature the Subaru Legacy, to see how it compares to other cars in this market, like the Camry, but also the Nissan Altima as well, but also to see if you are looking at buying a sedan and you don't want a crossover, then maybe taking a look at the Subaru Legacy might be a great decision. Now, before I get in this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Subaru of Wakefield in Wakefield, Massachusetts, for allowing me to do this review. The link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Subaru inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. Where the sedan segment is today in 2022 is where Subaru was 20 years ago, as cars like the Camry and Nissan Altima now offer all-wheel drive, as consumer demand has shifted to not only wanting practical vehicles, but means of transportation that can tackle a variety of road conditions. The Legacy nameplate has a long and historic lineage, and despite Americans preferring crossovers, Subaru's midsize sedan has continued to provide an alternative for buyers who are reluctant to become a part of the latest trend. Even with the waning popularity for family cars, today's automotive climate has opened the door for sedans to once again become relevant, and it's possible that in 2022, now is the best time to consider downsizing. Starting off with pricing, the Subaru Legacy Limited XT comes in at just over $35,000, which sits at the higher end of the trim levels for this midsize sedan. When looking at a price range that begins below $25,000, the Legacy can also be an economical and an affordable choice compared to buying a crossover. But also, if you don't need a spacious cargo area and having an abundant amount of leg and headroom for the second row isn't a priority, this sedan can be an all-around great daily driver. Similar in size to the Toyota Camry, you'll find that the Legacy is maneuverable and easy to get adapted to, where in city driving situations, you have the confidence to get around objects. But also when parking, its shorter length should make it easier to squeeze into spots on the street. For the road presence, Subaru continues to take a far less adventurous approach with this sedan, where the differences between the 6th and 7th generations on the outside are minimal, besides some minor alterations to the headlights and taillights, which is rather incredible considering that the current Legacy is built on an entirely different platform than its predecessor. While critics may demand a dynamic exterior, that's never been Subaru's MO with this sedan, as safety, comfort, and year-round drivability with standard all-wheel drive has taken precedence. However, giving the Legacy a modern appearance is steering responsive LED headlights, and for the Limited, LED fog lights to provide better illumination on dimly lit streets. Then taking a look at the side profile, the Limited will be sitting on 18-inch machine finish alloy wheels wrapped in all-season tires. Even with the larger wheel size, the Legacy handles imperfections in the road with ease, and the suspension is nice and soft to enhance the laid-back driving experience. You'll have body color folding side mirrors with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Moving around to the back, distinguishing the XT from non-turbo models is the dual exhaust outlets to add a subtle hint of sportiness, And a minor touch that won't be appreciated enough until you get up close to the Legacy is the gloss black accents that outline the taillights. When compared to the past two generations, the 2022 model is a bit more evolutionary when it comes to the cosmetic styling cues. And even though other Subaru models have also undergone similar transformations, it's the Legacy that has retained its familiar appearance, as that's what most buyers have demanded throughout the years. Under the hood, the Limited XT is powered by a 2.4-liter turbocharged boxer 4-cylinder engine that produces 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque, and is paired with a CVT. As with most sedans in this market, opting for the stronger powertrain ensures that you enjoy every minute behind the wheel. But most importantly, you'll have the performance that's necessary to enter highways safely. However, if you're looking to save a bit on your next car purchase, and you also want better fuel efficiency, going with the 2.5-liter makes more sense, as you can expect to receive right around 27 miles per gallon in the city and 35 miles per gallon on the highway, whereas turbo models will experience a slight decrease, with 24 and 32 respectively. Where Subaru has the upper hand on rivals is by offering all-wheel drive standard, which allows drivers to tackle winter road conditions in colder regions of the US. When stepping inside, this is where switching over to Subaru's global platform has paid immediate dividends for the Legacy, as buyers are greeted by an interior that offers comfort and higher quality materials to help elevate the driving experience. On the Limited XT trim, both the driver and passenger will have power adjustable heated leather seats, with the driver's side being 2-position memory for added convenience. But for a few grand more, the Touring will give you ventilated Napa leather seats that enhances the plushness found inside. In front of you, you'll have a heated leather-wrapped steering wheel, and as you've seen across the board for Subaru models, you'll have a small digital information display in between the analog gauges. And by using the buttons mounted on the lower left side of the steering wheel, you can scroll through data and customize what you see in front of you. Then taking a glance at the head unit, the Limited XT will be equipped with an 11.6-inch touchscreen, with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, to go along with onboard navigation. And we also have the upgraded Harman Kardon premium audio system to amplify the sound of your favorite music. It should be noted that this user interface is optional for the non-turbo Limited model, and some of the amenities and features you see in this Legacy will come at an additional cost on lower trims. Compared to rival brands, Subaru's interior design, specifically when talking about the tech you'll be interacting with, is more visually appealing than what we've experienced from other Japanese manufacturers. There will be physical buttons mounted on either side of the screen, where you can adjust the dual-zone climate control. But keep in mind that for the heated seats and fan speeds, that can only be accessed by using the touchscreen. With the head unit shaped like a tablet, it should become second nature to use, and the icons are cleanly laid out where scrolling through menus shouldn't be a hassle. You'll have a rear backup camera with trajectory to go along with reverse automatic braking. Below, you'll have a cubby for a smartphone, but a wireless phone charging pad is optional. By minimizing the button clutter and having everything on the head unit itself, the center console is very straightforward and simple, so you won't be looking down to adjust vehicle settings. For the center storage compartment, you'll have enough room for smaller items. And rounding out the front seating area, above will be a power moonroof to let in some natural light to the interior. Now taking a look at the second row seating area, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And this seat is adjusted all the way back and somewhat on a recline. And I still have a few inches of legroom to work with here. And when it comes to interior spacing, the Legacy is on par with its closest rivals. And relatively speaking, it is family friendly. And that's why I do recommend that if you do want to own a sedan instead of a crossover, going with a midsize is a better option than the compacts that are out on the market. Now, if you're on the height of 5'8" or 5'9", you may find that with the front seats adjusted all the way back, that you will be a bit claustrophobic and cramped. But it is great to see that as someone of my height around 5'5", I can still sit back here comfortably and I'm not going to be complaining on a longer drive. Now, when it comes to headroom though, of course, with the Legacy being a sedan and having a sedan roofline, taller passengers may hit their head on the headliner, so certainly keep that in mind. And if that is a bit of an issue, I would recommend going with an Outback or Forester. Then moving on to the center seat, you do have some good placements for your feet. But as I say with a lot of cars in this market, you're just not going to be able to fit a third person back here. And it's not because of shoulder room. I do think shoulder room is more than adequate, but because the aggressive center hump, that does take away from legroom. So it might be a bit difficult to try fitting in a third average size adult. However, if you have 3 kids back here, it might work. But again, the Subaru Legacy isn't designed to be a family hauler. I think if that's the case, you might want to go with that Forester. I still think the Forester is the best 2-row vehicle in the Subaru lineup. But since you are looking at a Legacy, most likely you don't need to worry about having people in the second row at all times. And for a vehicle that's just designed for 4 people overall, I think that's where the Legacy is really at its best. So keep all of that in mind for sure, but I think on maybe a shorter drive, you might be able to squeeze that third person. And then on the driver's side, I adjusted the seat to someone of my height, around 5'5", and I have plenty of legroom to work with here. And I think that for smaller families, for smaller people, this is a great car where you're not going to get the crossover driving experience, and most likely you are fixated on owning a sedan, and this is where you get the best of both worlds. You get the car-like driving experience, but also you get the interior spacing that you need if you do have people sitting in the second row throughout the week. Also back here, you will have 2 rear air vents to go along with 2 level heated outboard seats, 2 USB inputs, and rounding out the rear seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive right around 15.1 cubic feet of rear cargo space, which is pretty much identical to the Toyota Camry and also the Nissan Altima, but it does fall a bit short compared to the Honda Accord, and that's because the Accord has a Sportback rear end, which does add to the practicality. I was able to fit all my camera gear today and then some. I usually leave some camera gear at home, but I could have brought that and had no problem fitting even more items such as groceries or anything else I might be doing throughout the day. Now, if you are going on a road trip with the family or a significant other, I do think you could fit probably 3 and maybe even a 4th bag of luggage. So when it comes to the practicality aspect, the Legacy is a great road trip vehicle. Now, with the second row seats folded, that space is going to double in size. So if you do need to fit longer items, you can do so with ease. And really, when you look at what the Legacy is offering, if you don't want a crossover, you have the practicality where you can go on that weekend getaway, but also you have the interior spacing where you can bring some friends or possibly even some family members along with you. Out of all the points of emphasis for the 2022 Subaru Legacy, whether it's the performance, the turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, the CVT, the massive 11.6-inch touchscreen, what does get lost amongst all the talking points is the fact that what Subaru has done to this generation, and having it built on Subaru's global platform, is add a lot of refinement and rigidity that was lacking in the prior generations and the prior model years. And even though the Subaru Legacy is not going to give you this exhilarating driving experience, you're not going to get pushed back in your seat, and you're not going to look at this car as being one that you're going to be going on some winding back roads and eating up the corners. What it is, though, is a car that is very comfortable, very forgiving when it comes to the suspension, but also a car that when you step inside, you feel as though you're in your own personal bubble. And when it comes to the road noise or lack thereof, it's very quiet in here. You can get behind the wheel and just enjoy a long road trip. And that's what I think has been really misunderstood and often overlooked with this sedan. Now, as we loop back onto the highway, let's see how the handling and cornering ability is for the Legacy. You do have a good amount of performance on the low end to get you safely as you merge onto a rotary or even on the highway. And then as we're taking these corners at around 40 miles an hour, very smooth. Now, you're not going to get a lot of feedback with the steering, But when it comes to being really planted to the road, it does have a nice sensation. And again, you're not going to have that sports-inspiring performance and experience, but for a daily driver, this is pretty nice and soft. Now, getting back on the highway, you're going to feel a little bit of body roll there. But I love the performance that you get with this turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. You're not going to be begging for more power. You can get on the highway safely, and you can pass slower drivers. Now, that is helped with the turbo, but when it comes to the naturally aspirated 4-cylinder, I think it's still adequate for what it is. And as you can tell right there, the safety systems do kick in. So you are kind of forced to use your turn signal. Brake feel, pretty nice. You don't really need to get on that brake pedal too aggressively to slow this car down. Getting into the interior layout for the Subaru Legacy, and this is a big one for me just because where rivals are at right now, where they're giving you more of an upscale experience, even though this segment was never known to give you more of an entry-level luxury feel unless you're going on the highest trim possible. But what I like here is that you do have a nice center console, it does wrap around you to a certain degree, and it does give you a sense of security and safety. Also, of course, I love the 11.6-inch touchscreen, but we could have a lengthy debate on that as to whether it is user-friendly because it doesn't have a lot of physical buttons. But also, when it comes to other vehicles in this market, I do think, though, that this is still an eye-opener, especially in this price range. And then, of course, you have a nice heated leather-wrapped steering wheel, your analog gauges, and also a small digital information display in the center. But it is really nicely clean laid out, and of course, again, it all comes back to the soft touch materials that Subaru has given this car, and that's one of the reasons why I love the fact that it is built on Subaru's global platform. That is one platform that I think has been really overlooked and not given enough credit for what it's done to the Subaru lineup in general, and specifically for the Legacy. Because compared to the Nissan Altima I filmed about a month ago, this is really, I think, on par with that. But also, when it comes to the soft touch materials, there's a bit more of that on the dashboard than there is in the Altima. But also, when it comes to the driving environment, I believe that it's still a better layout than the Toyota Camry. And again, we can have a conversation on that, and I'm pretty sure that some of you would disagree. But I'm just not a fan of what the Camry is offering when it comes to their interiors. Now, in non-aggressive acceleration situations, the CVT does mimic the gear shifts quite well, and you don't get that constant droning even at lower speeds or just in light accelerations. And that's why I do feel that you're not necessarily going to miss the lack of a traditional automatic. And I think if you're looking at buying a Subaru Legacy, you're not really particularly focused on rowing through the gears yourself or really, driving aggressively in that manner. So when it comes to the daily driving capabilities of this sedan, you are going to love the fact that it is quiet, that it is comfortable, that the leather seats do provide a good amount of support, even though they're not aggressively bolstered. But also, having the turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, in my opinion, is certainly the way to go, just because you're not going to experience those times where you're going to be hungry for more power. Even though I do think the 2.5 liter is more than adequate and sufficient, and pretty much on par with other naturally aspirated 4-cylinders in this market, going turbo is never a bad idea, although the 2.5 is more fuel efficient. A-pillars are not really that aggressive at all. They don't really create that much of a blind spot. Side mirrors are decently sized so you can see what is in your blind spots. And then looking out back, you don't have aggressive rear headrests, so rear visibility is pretty good. But all in all, after this test drive, the Subaru Legacy, even though it is going to lack some character when it comes to driving, when it comes to the lack of feedback when you're steering and you're cornering, it's a car that is certainly a great daily driver, but also one in which you're going to have the confidence giving the keys to the younger driver in the family, where you have those aggressive safety systems, where you are kind of forced to really use those turn signals because you're going to be hearing the beeping from the lane departure warning. But also, of course, when it comes to the seatbelt, Subaru is very serious about that, where that chime will get louder and louder the longer you drive without wearing your seatbelt. And it's funny because I get comments saying they hate that, but you're supposed to be wearing your seatbelt. That is just common sense. You don't really want to be going through the front windshield. But really, though, the safety systems to me is what makes this car a great all-around daily for really anyone of age, whether it is a 16-year-old or a 90-year-old. You're going to feel very comfortable in this car, and you're going to feel very secure and safe, best of all. So to wrap up this review, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for the 2022 Subaru Legacy? And I actually believe that this car is overlooked and misunderstood in its segment. Now, even though that Subaru has really moved on to a full lineup of crossovers, and that's their main focus with the Outback, the Forester, and the Crosstrek, the Legacy has kind of just sat there and really just been a mid-size sedan for older buyers, but I think even younger buyers as well that are looking to purchase their first ever car. But this generation, though, does have a few points that really makes this car stand out. Even though from the exterior, people will say that, oh, it's not as striking, it's not as sports inspiring as maybe even a Camry or an Accord. But when you step inside, you're greeted by a very comfortable and refined interior with soft touch padding found throughout, whether it is the center console, the armrest on the door panels, or even the dashboard itself. This has a premium feel, but not necessarily the premium price tag. And then when you take a look at the technology, now I do think that people could make the argument that having a lack of physical buttons does take away from the user experience, and that you might want to opt for the more traditional layout for the lower trims in the Legacy lineup, but also I think with what we see with the Forester and the Crosstrek. But I think this is a great blend where you do have analog gauges, but also you have this nice tablet-like touchscreen that I think is certainly better than what we've experienced from the Nissan Altima and the Toyota Camry. I think a lot of people disagree with me on this, but the Camry's interior just is not that great. It's just not what you expect in this price point and for 2022. Also, what I like too is that this user interface is reflective of what we're seeing in the automotive world, where a lot of this layout is becoming popular right now, whether it's from Tesla or even Ford with the new Sync 4 system, and it certainly modernizes the cabin. But then when it comes to the driving experience and driving dynamics, that's where people will say that, well, it has a CVT and that it's not as enjoyable as a traditional automatic. However, the turbocharged four-cylinder engine does help out with that. But we see this with the Nissan Altima as well, which does have a CVT, but it doesn't receive as much criticism as the Legacy, which I'm not fully understanding why. Because if you are looking at buying a sedan in this price range, you're not looking for a car that will do 0 to 60 times in 4 seconds. You're not looking for a car that's going to be a Canyon Carver. You want a vehicle that can get you to point A to point B comfortably and safely, and that's exactly what the Subaru Legacy has been designed to do. And this generation, I think, is a great evolutionary step for this particular car because you get the technology, but you still have more of that old school design that I think a lot of older buyers, but even younger buyers can appreciate. And especially if you are a parent, you can hand the keys over to the young driver in the family with confidence that the safety systems will keep them safe on those longer drives. And that's why I feel that the 2022 Subaru Legacy is still providing a lot of value, even though a lot of brands have moved away from this segment, but even the ones that still remain might have a few aspects that might outshine the Legacy. This car, to me, though, as price point, is still a great option. And when you take a look at the interior space that you have here, it is somewhat family friendly, somewhat practical, and I think still a great all-around daily driver. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. and I will see you guys next time.